get this started. All right. Back at you. Kellen for Company, my name is Kellen, and I've been talking about making this video for a while. So, for my 40th birthday here, which was in earlier November, I went out to see my sister and hang out in Maryland. She lives outside of Baltimore, but while I was there was an audio festival, which is something I wanted to go visit. And to kind of backtrack a little bit, I've done a couple of videos about audio stuff in the world of heavy metal, and it's something that every once in a while I kind of want to keep pace with. Anyway, one of the major complaints I have when anyone is looking for a new speaker or any kind of whatever, something for their system that they want to update, and there's very little information regarding all things metal, and I wanted to get an opportunity to listen onto speakers that I would potentially be cross-shopping, or was just curious to hear what was out there, and things that I kind of had been checking out, wanted to hear my music on a system like that. So this was a cool opportunity to do that. Clear off this stuff on the camera. So what the plan was to head out and check out a few rooms. There were some key brands I wanted to look into. I did bring my camera with me, but the clips that I gathered, there were some issues with the audio. So what I'm going to do here for this video, I thought it'd be easier. Like, some of the formatting was an issue in terms of what my software can handle between the photos and different video clips, etc. So I'm going to do all of that in post instead of kind of doing a live talk through. And that will allow us to kind of look at all the different sort of images and video content. Because the audio didn't show up great, I'll just kind of talk over and explain to what I saw and heard. But you walk into this, it was at a hotel, like a Hilton outside of Baltimore, and as you can see, it's the entire essential, I want to say like 6 floors, first 6 floors were all occupied by different brands. Now the rooms were either showcasing products or were essentially where the hotel room had been sort of stuffed with all the furniture. So you kind of walked around, and when I first went in, the bottom floor in the lobby was all sorts of actual record collectors and people who wanted to sell music. I mean, I was not interested. I spent enough time and money doing record shopping and all that kind of good stuff, but that was not my intent. I was a little bit curious though to see what they had on hand. Like, to kind of reiterate this point, I'm there to to talk about metal stuff. They really didn't have, they had any cool metal records, but anyone who potentially would share my interests, they might have a cool pressing of something like that, and I was, pretty unimpressed. You have your standard, whatever, Metallica or Iron Maiden, but nothing really beyond that, and nothing that seemed like limited, pressing or some rare collectible item that would be unique or meaningful to anyone who's like a diehard audiophile record collector, right? So the first place on this first floor, they had a couple of showcase brands, and there's this company called VAC that I believe stands for Valve Audio Company. I can double check that here. Valve Amplification Company. And they make some pretty high-end stuff, but all kind of tube-based amplification. Anyway, they were showcasing the first room with a newer speaker brand called Volti Acoustics. And if you look at like the cost of what this room is, I mean, we're talking about the speakers from Volti. The base price go for $218,000. Just to kind of briefly, this is the main room that I just walked into. Now, in a room like this, you can't just like request, hey, can we play Carcass? You know, they have people there who are, I don't want to say guarding the system, but it wasn't for like, you know, open requests like some of the smaller rooms that I will head to later, where they were more willing to kind of take musical requests. There's this system altogether, right? Just the phono stage, meaning the phono amplifier, from leads, the only job this thing has to do is to amplify your record, the signal coming from your record player. That costs $82,000. So this room was absolutely ridiculous. These are kind of like showcase rooms where the super high-end stuff is going to be. This is where I started, and I kind of wanted to begin my journey here to be like, you know, there's an upper end sort of ceiling to this world that I have no aspiration to touch. Even if, you know, like I had $1 billion, whatever, like this is so completely divorced from, I think, the spirit of why I'm at this show, and from the just sense of like culture that I have with heavy metal heads. Like, anyway, I had sidelined, you know, a couple of brands that I really wanted to see. This is not one of them, but I just thought by like comparison and contrast, like there's this world out here, and I'll kind of show you a quick little photo I took of the room. This was pretty early on, so I didn't want to spend a lot of time here, but you know, it was pretty ridiculous, and you know, just to be a good time to sort of mention this. By no means, I've talked about this in the past, but I'm not trying to say like you need to spend tons of money on your audio system to enjoy your records. Like I just want to, I've said that in the past. I do not want, the point of this video is not to try and like feel like someone should be priced out of this conversation. I don't have this kind of money. I'm guessing most people on planet Earth, who has this like $1 million to spend on their audio system? That sounds absolutely ridiculous to me. So unless you're like some oligarch or one of the few places in the world that has an existing monarchy, you are some crazy CEO of a company. Like, I don't know these people. Anyway, I quickly moved on from that room to kind of go and check out the first couple systems. So this room I really didn't intend on spending a lot of time in, but I immediately recognized the speakers because I did want to look for this particular speaker brand. So what you're looking at there is the speaker primarily is from a brand called Volti Audio. I believe they're based out of Tennessee, so not too far from me. And they'll make a couple appearances here, but I was looking at like the guide in the room, and I didn't expect to find this particular speaker brand in this room, but it stopped me in my journey because I wanted to go check them out, and just to make sure that I didn't miss this particular speaker here. So the reason I wanted to check out this particular brand is horn designs are often associated with sort of heavy metal and rock music. They have some qualities that are incredibly attractive for anyone listening to like music like ours, being like high sensitivity, means you don't need a lot of power to drive them, but what is helpful is whatever power you like in terms of wattage or amplification you have on your system. For really highly energetic and dynamic music, the higher the sensitivity is, usually the better. Meaning if you have music with ton of energy, the more efficient your speaker is, the more likely it'll also be able to capture the complexity of the dynamics on your music. So for sensitivity rating, how that works is just a little briefly, like in my novice understanding of it, the higher the sensitivity, meaning like 95, 96, 97 decibels per meter per watt. So when they take a measurement of the speaker, it's like from a meter away, and they just play 1 watt into the speaker, and so how loud it gets. You know, I think there's probably different brands who use different measurements, but like that's a general way to think about it. These speakers are like 97, 98 dB sensitive, which is really high. So they sounded great, and they were actually playing vinyl, which is a bonus. I think if I were to do one of these again, I'd probably bring my own records. I didn't expect a lot of people to be playing, playing like vinyl or CD. But this brand was, because they were, I think, Marison. I'll double check on my notes here. It was a phono stage that they were highlighting. Included here is a linear tube audio preamp and amp, and which is a brand out of Maryland. But this is probably like 50 watts, which just isn't a lot. But these speakers probably don't need more than a handful. Like you could probably get away with like 20 watts or something like that, if not less, with these speakers because they're so sensitive. It sounded great, and the record, they finally were like, hey, anyone can play anything. They didn't have much that I was interested in, but the track that I did pull up and had them play was the opening track off of Yes, Close to the Edge, which is a pretty wild track, and there's a lot of things going on there. So in terms of complexity and being able to capture it, like 100% on point with what these speakers are meant to offer, designed to offer, I should say. But this was a great way to start the show. Everyone was super friendly in the room, and I was happy they kind of let me pick a record of my choosing and listen to it. So that was super cool. Good way to start the system. And these speakers were phenomenal. Like I said, I'll talk about them a little bit more, but move on from there. So the next room was, this is Fidelity Imports, and I did not know. So in this room here, what they're showing off is, this is Gashelli Labs was collaborating with Fidelity Imports, and they were showcasing some acoustic energy speakers. So this speaker I also had been looking at, it's a 520 is the model, and in the middle of the system there they have like they were playing off of an iPhone that was just plugged into a digital analog converter. So from there it just went into these new sort of like prototype amps, and then the acoustic energy speakers. I also came back to this room later on as well. But because they were kind of playing whatever off of Spotify or something like that, like super bare bones. You know, this is much more like my range in terms of budget. I had them play Rainbow's Stargazer, which is super cool to hear off of this system, and they indulged me in that. Interesting note for anyone who may be concerned, at the time I was listening to this, Michael Fremer, who is famous from like Stereophile and Analog Planet. He's a well-known vinyl enthusiast in the audio community. He came in and took a quick like sort of video footage and briefly talked. But anyway, I came back to this room later on in the evening, which is kind of the highlight of the show, but I'll get back to that later. So these speakers, let's come back to it. Okay, so here is I found the real Volti room, and you can see we have the same speaker in a different sort of color. But in terms of like I once again was able to kind of pick a record or pick an album of my choosing here, and I had them play A Dangerous Meeting from Merciful Fate off of it. Once again, these speakers are probably my favorite speakers in the show. I think they're a little bit problematic for my room because they're a little bit larger than what a smaller room like mine can handle. So you have like this tweeter, compression horn, tweeter, and mid-range, which is kind of what you see on the top and the middle there. The way Volti Audio designs their speakers is like the throat, or like the best way to describe it is like where the driver begins. Instead of it being really small, the opening of the horn is actually much larger, and that changes kind of the way the horn sounds. Major complaints with like a horn design is it sometimes sounds like squawky, like someone's got their hands over their mouth sort of deal, is the way it's explained to me. So when you open that up, it becomes a little bit more audible and natural. They take that approach. I think Greg was originally sort of like redesigning Klipsch speakers, like Klipsch horn speakers, which are pretty well known. So he started by redesigning them and then turned that into his old brand. And if I had the money, I would 100% be willing to grab these speakers, or the room for that matter. So maybe down the road, we'll see what happens, but in my more immediate future, these are kind of beyond my price range. Greg, does not really dig, he's much more of a streaming guy, so this whole system was set up for streaming. On the bottom rack there, we have in like kind of silver is an Inuos streamer that's connected to this Mystique DAC, which is that black sort of slender box, and then to that is a Carry Audio amplifier. Now, just to compare and contrast, I heard these speakers with the linear tube audio gear in the first room. This was much more like explosive in terms of the sound. It was more engaging a listen. The linear tube audio works really well if you wanted something that was a little bit more laid back in presentation. This Carry Audio was like some pretty kick-ass tube amp to be set up with these speakers. Like, it was a beautiful sort of synergistic pairing here. So I know Greg likes to, when anyone buys speakers from him, he likes to pair them with the amps, and I'd 100% want to like take his advice before, not picking up the speakers, to also think about like, I want to recreate this sound here. So Carry Audio is the way to go about that. I would want to pick his brain before making a purchase, because hearing A Dangerous Meeting, a record that has all sorts of ambient characteristics of that recording on Don't Break the Oath, it's like a great like 80s record, and having this playing in the room with people who were coming in and hearing King Diamond sort of falsetto scream, they kind of did a double take. But I got through a couple of minutes of that song before the guy in the controls asked to change the song, which was, I was happy at least that they obliged me there. So from there, I moved on to a brand that's pretty divisive in the audio world, which is Zoo Audio. So right there's Sean. So Sean Casey is the chief designer of these speakers. And Zoo Audio, so they're kind of known for like wanting to get a little bit of a horn sound, but from a different kind of design. His speakers are incredibly polarizing because there's a part of the audio world that looks at like measurements, sort of any kind of objective data that you would use to sort of qualify whether a speaker sounds great. And his speakers are not designed for that at all. So they're 100% sort of like about trying to create a specific vibe and to attract a customer based on a kind of sound that is based off of live music, which if anyone's like kind of speaks to me a little bit as a metalhead. Like when I go to a live concert, that's like an experience that for so many people in the audio world are trying to replicate. But I guarantee you, like whatever concert hall you go saw your favorite thrash or death metal or black metal band in, those rooms don't measure great. They don't have great acoustics. But that's often seen as like the criteria in terms of the epitome of the experience and what we're trying to create with our home audio system. So the fact that like that is almost like a very direct and implicit part of their design in terms of philosophy, like the fact that he was like, you know, got a couple of turntable set up here. He was DJing the entire time, kind of sitting on the floor. You can see he's got a few different sort of boxes or crates full of records that were strewn across the floor. It's like, these are my people, right? And I think Sean's, you know, younger guy, it felt like refreshing to head into a room, and he played Screenshot by the Swans for me. He's talked about like Doom and stuff like that previously in terms of like what people could be looking for from his speakers. I think he mentioned that a couple times he's brought like a Primitive Man release whatever to his show to see if anyone wanted to hear something like that. But yeah, he played some Swans for me. Once again, his speakers also very high in sensitivity, so that works well for the kind of music, you know, like heavy metal music. And he had a partnership with Black Ice Audio, so that's the kind of tube amp you see there on the table in front of him. More tube design here, so I don't think outside of, I guess it's a theme through a good amount of these rooms. But anyway, Sean was super cool, and I got a chance to talk to him a little bit about his speakers and his design. So at this point of the day, I've got Stargazer and Yes and Merciful Fate and then Swans. So in that sense, like I was able to hear some of the speakers with these on these systems. You know, having Zoo, for one that was so polarizing, to like not know who to trust. For some people who absolutely love it and some people absolutely hate it, I would co-sign this. I like this sound a lot. His speakers didn't have necessarily the model I'd be interested in, but I went to a second room. He's got some, I believe those are Soul Supreme, are like the little kind of stout speakers he has there on the floor. But there are some other speakers by that brand that I would potentially be interested in. So, feeling somewhat accomplished and being able to hear some of the songs that I wanted to, I kind of took a lunch and a little bit of a recap, things that I heard. There are a few other key brands that I wanted to check in on. But from here, I kind of took off and I was distracted by this one. So this is Falon Acoustics. It's a British company. And I walked into this and you can see there's like a larger speaker, and the one that they were playing when I first walked in is that tiny little thing on the outsides there. That's their version of a LS35A. And the amplification here was by a brand called Lab 12. I don't know if they're an American brand or a European one, but this room, like, I didn't surprise me, I guess is what I'll say, is I did not expect this room to have like such an engaging sound. Sometimes British speakers get known for often being a little bit reserved and laid back, which is not a bad thing, but I 100% could have lived with these. And if like you have like a desktop setup and you don't have room for like a, you know, a larger sort of acoustic space to listen to something, and you have like a desk and you're just gonna have two speakers like sitting in the near field, Man, I 100% recommend these little things. I don't know how much they go for. I can look it up here quick. But those speakers 100% sounded huge relative to their size. And this room was really cool. The phono stage and DAC sounded great. I don't know if they were playing a record or streaming, I don't remember, but anyway, this is one that I didn't intend to spend time in, but very much caught my eye, and those little LS35A speakers for a desktop setup would be killer. Okay, so the next room was a really important one for me. This is a brand from England that is not known for their being reserved. So this is ATC, and this is a company that's often associated with pro audio. They do a lot of active speakers, meaning the amplification is built into the speaker, so you don't need a separate amp to power them. But they are really popular just for their accuracy, clarity, and dynamics. Like, they do really complex music. If you can power them sufficiently, because they are not known for their efficiency, people will often recommend to get the best out of them, you're looking for around 200 watts. As opposed to like some of those Volti speakers that we saw earlier where you could do just fine with 20. On this particular system, I was listening to Dead Can Dance. I believe the song yeah, so I know this particular speaker, which is a ATC SEM Active. This is an active speaker. I listened to Dead Can Dance, host of Seraphim, and which was super cool. That's an actual subwoofer in the middle of the room, but just huge sound stage, tons of clarity. In particular, like, I'm noticing, I don't consider myself to be like an analytical detail snob, but one of the things I'm really sensitive to, like in personal taste, that I love about guitar tone is like if there's a mix or guitar player or an album that has a lot of leading edge, like I love that aspect. And I don't want a system that's gonna roll or smooth that over. And these speakers had tons of clarity in like upper mid-range and treble, which I felt would have done really good job in terms of speaking to that aspect. So when you wanted to hear something sharp, you didn't have a speaker that was gonna veil that in any way. So yeah, listen to Dead Can Dance in this one. And then I went to a different ATC room where they were playing this speaker, which is an SCM40. This is a three-way speaker. And I listened to two different songs. Obviously, I had a lot of fun in this room. So, the first song that I had them play was off of Birds of Fire. So I listened to, from Mahavishnu Orchestra. So I listened to the title track on this system. And then after that, I listened to a favorite song of mine, which is, if anyone who watched the Eternus album club, the Sentinels of Darkness, I also listened to off of this speaker system. And these are active speakers once again. It's a three-way speaker. And, it's probably not the most imposing looking speaker, but they sounded absolutely huge. And the bass off of this was sort of, I was sitting right up against the wall, which is never ideal when you're listening, because like you get a bunch of acoustic effects sort of reverberating off the back wall. So the bass was definitely boosted, and off of a relatively small driver, absolutely crushing. So from here, I actually went back. Here's a photo. This is a second zoo room. that I went to, and you couldn't tell. So they were highlighting different sort of black ice mono blocks, which you can see on the floor here. But the speakers that are positioned up on those stands were prototypes from Zoo, and they were all covered, like wrapped in this, cloth, so you couldn't see anything because I guess they look so ugly. They're just these very early prototype speakers, but Sean did encourage me to check out this space, and I listened to a few more Swans songs on this system. When I came in, someone had requested a Daft Punk song, so that was playing. But anyway, what you can see is off in the corner of the room, there was a subwoofer that was underneath the table. I guess they placed it for the acoustic reasons. But I don't know when this speaker from Zoo is going to be unveiled, probably sometime later in 2025. I'm sure they'll announce that. At this point, I pretty much got a chance to see everything I really wanted to, like speakers I was cross-shopping for the end of the year. So I just kind of kicked around a few different rooms. I had no reason to really spend a lot of time in them, but one of them was this room. Look at this. This is an electrostatic speaker. It is the entire, this poor little suite from ceiling to floor. That is a speaker. So it's like a large sort of panel speaker. My tech is the amplification. There's some Class D amps there. But look at this thing. It is, the ceilings weren't too tall, but that's still probably like an 8-foot ceiling. And that speaker spanned the ceiling to floor. This is a different room I went into. More sort of electrostatic speakers, like panel speakers. I just kind of wanted to get a chance to listen to some of these things. I don't know if you can tell, they're the kind of there's kind of the black paneling and then the silver sides. Those are actual speakers. And that sort of membrane in the middle is what sort of reverberating or vibrating, creating sound, as opposed to a traditional sort of speaker cone. Then you went to some other rooms here. These are some open baffle speakers. That's cool to see that, But they had some crazy horn designs in here. Look at that. I guess it's a really adventurous avant-garde sort of speaker design. I don't know if that's a brand called Avant-Garde does speakers like that, but nevertheless. This is a Bel Canto room, and I think YG Acoustics is the speaker brand there. There's just a couple people talking in this room. I briefly stepped in to check that out, but at the end of the evening, I came back to the Geshelli Labs room and these acoustic energy speakers for no other reason than Gino, who you briefly see there helping me get set up, whatever. He's the guy who does all the designs for Geshelli Labs, which is primarily started as a DAC company, has moved into and amplification. They're going to have more preamps and mono blocks, it looks like, power amps coming out. But I wanted to hear these speakers because they are also one that I was sort of cross-shopping. And we just listened to he's a metalhead too, apparently. So he's like, man, after the show comes over finishes at 6 o'clock, just come back to this room and we'll just listen to some heavy metal for half an hour before I have to go get dinner. So for half an hour, we just listened to different heavy metal tracks. He played, the first track he picked out was Death's cover of Judas Priest's Painkiller, which was pretty cool. That completely won me over. The other tracks we played were the openers, Through Silver and Blood by Neurosis, High on Fire, Devolution, and the one that was really interesting for me, and I guess I'll kind of close on this, was a track that I absolutely love, but is a good sort of test track in terms of being a torture test for a system is Emperor's Thus Spake the Night Spirit, because the complexity of that song is super challenging to sort of like distill parts of that. And this speaker, when like the double bass kicked in, one, you have to be fast enough to keep pace with Trim's drumming on that record. The double bass and like sort of blast beat work is blisteringly fast. So you need a speaker that can keep up with all of that, but then you have all the different layering in terms of guitars and synths and vocals, and it's just a super busy record. And that kind of dense sound, it's difficult to have a speaker that can distill all parts of that. So I felt like this speaker had a hard time, like it had the weight and bass energy that you needed, and it was able to keep up with the recording, but go back and just listening to this room at a show, I know that's not the best way to judge a speaker, but I felt like some parts of that mid-range got a little bit blurry. That where the synths and guitars sort of were designed to sort of be separate entities in the mix. This speaker had a difficult time pulling them apart. And sort of the bass sound sort of consumed a little bit of that space acoustically. So in that sense, it was a major challenge for this speaker to keep up with. But part of that, could also be the fact that we're playing it off of a phone. It's like we're just playing it off of Spotify, as opposed to like a record or anything like that. So anyway, that kind of wrapped up my experience. I went home at a little bit after the show officially ended at 6, but I left it around 6:40, hanging out with Gino in the Chile Labs room. This was a super cool opportunity, and I got to listen to actually a bunch of different metal tracks, right? Like I mentioned, Emperor, High on Fire, Neurosis, Merciful Fate, Eternus, some prog rock, Yes, and Mahavishnu Orchestra, Dead Can Dance, something that's not metal that I also listen to that maybe will speak to some metalheads out there. But overall, yeah, like part of it was everything you thought it was going to be. It was a lot of Dire Straits and Norah Jones and sort of predictable classical choices, but the show was small enough overall, despite its large size, that I felt like I could sort of make some requests, and I was happy to have some of the people there who were demoing speakers that I wanted to hear. They were like able to oblige my requests, and I was able, to hear some of the songs that I would actually listen to on my own in this kind of environment, in this setting, on a system that is purely aspirational for me. So it was a cool experience. What I would like to do is I need to upgrade my camera and audio game so I can go to this and try and give you guys some live recordings. It will never sound as ideal as it would in your own room. These are smaller hotel suites, so they aren't really great for acoustic setups. And one of the things I constantly hear is you should never judge a system at an audio show just because there are less than ideal setups. So thank you to all of the brands who came and did some showcasing, who were kind enough to listen to this metalhead make some heavy metal song requests, and whether you spun them or just streamed them for me to listen to. I'm just very grateful and happy to have the experience. I'll be back. There's the next major show that's closest to me is actually in 2025. Chicago, or outside of Chicago. Exponent, I think, is the largest one in the US, so I may go back to that. It's a much larger show, and I think it'd be a different kind of vibe, but what I can say in following up is, this did help me make some decisions about which is the next speaker I'm going to pick up. At the end of this year, I will be making some upgrades to my system, so once those do come through, I will talk to you about them. And I also hope to be getting a stream together with Jurgen. I think his channel is called 6 Beers, 9 Wives. And I'm going to talk to him. He's actually someone who knows a good bit about audio. And I think he has a couple different systems in his home. And I kind of wanted to pick his brain about some of the, I think, best sounding records. Like if we're, metalheads and you're in an opportune moment, like I am here to go to a show like this and you want to test out a system, like what are the songs that Jurgen would recommend that you play and why? From someone who has not only tons of years of heavy metal sort of collecting, I also know he's into prog rock, and he also has a good amount of knowledge in terms of like audio equipment. I kind of wanted to pick his brain, so I'm going to try to find a time here in the coming month or so when he's free to sit down and have a conversation, see what recommendations he has for me, for you as a listener, if that'd be something you're interested in. Because at some point in time, people are going to want to make upgrades to their system, and knowing like great songs that be suited to our listening habits, I would really like to know what Jurgen has to say. So anyway, look for that in the coming future. Until then, I'll see you guys later. There's plenty of stuff, I guess, coming up, end of year lists. I'll be taking part in a couple of streams, and look for that in the coming month. And outside of that, what I would say is you can always check me on the Heavy Metallurgy channel Wednesday nights, part of Album Club. So until then, I'll see you guys later.